All right, so today we're going to talk about 7.2, which is solving our systems of equations. So again, we're going to have our two equations here, but we're using the method called substitution. So this is going to be the second method that we're talking about in this chapter. So again, our first method was graphing, right? And we found the intersection point between the two equations. And then that was our solution. It's going to be the same idea, but instead of graphing to find that intersection point and to find that point that works for both equations, we're going to use the method called substitution. And we're going to go through over here on this box, we're going to write out the list of steps, and I'm going to go ahead and walk you through two examples. So here we go, step one. So our steps. Step one, we're going to circle what the variable equals. And that probably doesn't make sense right at this moment, but I'm going to go ahead and explain. We want to look in both equations to find what the equations are saying. So we want to look to see if there's a variable that is by itself, meaning like this y is not by itself because the 2x is on the same side of the equal sign, right? This y is by itself because there's nothing else on this side of the equal sign with it. So it is by itself, all right? So circle what the variable equals. Well, here's my variable that's by itself. I want to circle everything on the other side of the equal sign. So I'm going to circle my x plus 1. Okay, and that's all we have to do for right now, because all I have to do is circle what the variable equals. Then, so step 2. Substitute what is circled into the other equation. Okay, so x plus 1 equals y. So if x plus 1 equals y, it means x plus 1 is the same thing as y, right? So in the second equation here, where we have y, instead of writing y, we're going to write x plus 1. So I'm going to go ahead, I circled this, and I'm going to draw an arrow to where it's going to go, and it's going to go in for that y. Okay? So when I go to write out my second equation here, I'm going to go ahead and write that out, but instead of writing y, I'm writing what I circled. So it's going to look like this. It's going to look like 2x plus y, but instead of y, I'm substituting in x plus 1, and it equals 7, because I'm finishing off my equation. Okay, so now I need to reevaluate my equation, and I say, okay, I need to solve for whatever variable is left. So I'm going to go ahead. Number 3, solve for the variable. So after you substitute, you're going to solve for whatever variable is left in your equation. Okay, now there should only be one variable here because we substituted in for our other variable. So there should only be one variable. So we're going to go ahead and solve. I have x here and I have x there. I don't have x's on the other side, so I don't have to worry about anything being on the other side. So 2x plus 1x gives us 3x plus 1 equals 7. Okay, draw your line, circle your variable. Okay, do your thing. Do we get rid of the 3 or the 1 first? Remember, you're always going to get rid of the number that is farther away from the variable. So we want to get rid of the 1. So to get rid of it, I'm going to do the opposite operation, meaning if it's addition, I'm going to subtract 3x. I'm going to go ahead and draw my lines here. I get 3x equals 6 divided by 3 on both sides. X equals 2. So I solve for the variable. Okay, and we can go ahead and box it. So now I know what my x value is, but I still need to find my y value. So step 4. Substitute the value. So the value we just solved for, okay, into the original equation and solve for remaining variable. Okay, so we know what x equals, but we don't know what y equals. And y is that remaining variable. So what we're going to do, we worked with the second equation and we substituted this into the second equation. We solved the second equation. We want to substitute this into the other equation. We want to substitute it back into the first equation. So I'm going to go ahead and draw my arrow. I want to plug into, I'm plugging into 4x. Right? I want to substitute in 2 for x into the first equation. So here we go. Let's go. We'll keep with this color. Y. Not plus. Y equals x, but instead of x, I'm writing 2 plus 1. So y equals 3. Box it. Guess what? You just found the x and the y value. Okay? I'd love to say we're done, yippee, we found both values, but just like graphing, we're going to write our solutions and write our answers the exact same way. So we write our answer as a coordinate pair. So my answer is 2, 3. Okay? So here we go. Let's do the next one. Same process, same idea. All right? We're going to use the same colors and use the same process as above from the first problem. Okay? So step 1, circle what the variable equals. So we need to look at our 2 equations and see if we can find the variable that's by itself. Okay? So the variable that's by itself is x. So I want to circle the other half. And then I'm going to draw my arrow to the x in the other equation because that's where I'm going to substitute in for. So I'm going to draw my arrow down to this x. All right, so I'm going to rewrite the second equation, but instead of x, I'm writing y minus 2. So 3 parentheses, because I'm substituting in that y minus 2 minus y equals 6. Okay? Again, all I did was take the y minus 2 that I circled and substitute it in for x. Now, when you substitute in for x, you need parentheses. All right? And remember, when you have a coefficient out front, that means we're going to take this 3 and we're going to distribute it into both terms. So we get 3y minus 6 minus y equals 6. Okay? Now, number 3. Solve for the variable. So whatever variable's left, we're going to go ahead and solve, which we kind of already started. So now all we have is y, so we're going to combine our y's and solve for y. So we have 3y minus y gives us 2y minus 6 equals 6. Draw your line, circle your variable. We're going to move the 6 over first by adding it to both sides. 2y equals 12. Divide by 2. Y equals 6. Okay, go ahead and box it because we found one value. We're going to take the 6 and we're going to substitute it in. Where's it going? Well, if you look back, we solved the second equation. So the 6 needs to go into the first equation. So x equals y, which is 6 minus 2. X equals 4. Box it. Last step, number 5, write your answer as a coordinate pair. okay? So the idea is the same. And we're not graphing, but our solution means the same thing. At this coordinate point, both of these equations are true, meaning that's where they intersect each other, okay? The toughest part and the trickiest part of this entire process, right, is remembering to substitute into the proper place and solving for that one variable, okay? So make sure when you go ahead and substitute that you're substituting into the right place. That's why I circle it, and that's why I draw the arrow, to help remind myself, where is this going, okay?